I don't know about you, but often there's not much change from $100 just popping along to the supermarket to get a couple of things. The food prices, the cost of living, the cost of putting basic items on the table are getting tougher and tougher. Look, it's going to be spring by Monday. So perhaps some good news on the horizon. Perhaps the cost of seasonal fruit and veggies will be coming down. But look, it's been a difficult winter, especially for organisations like the Salvation Army, who have been helping people make it through winter with a record numbers of food parcels being handed out this year. Joining me now from the Social Policy and Parliamentary Unit of the Salvation Army, Paul Barber. Paul, kia ora, thanks for your time.
Kia ora, it's good to be here.
This is an ongoing issue, the topic of food security for New Zealand. More and more Kiwi families not able to afford groceries or needing to make impossible decisions between buying food for the family and paying other essential bills. It certainly is a huge problem, but we've got some good news to talk about. Well, potentially some good news. I don't want to get too optimistic, Paul, but a couple of angles on this about something which potentially could make a real difference, both within the social justice sector, but also with government. I'm swallowing my cynicism, Paul, and saying that maybe this will make a big difference. The government is announcing, opportunities for more competition in the supermarket sector.
Yeah, look, it was yesterday the Minister, Nicola Willis, made some announcements around what the government's planning to do around addressing the whole issue of competition in the grocery market sector. And those announcements yesterday were really focused on things like making it easier to build a supermarket, access to land, encouraging a larger players to enter into competition with the main supermarket duopoly that exists pretty much in our country at the moment.
Yeah.
And those were some steps that they're looking at. They're also talking about trying to deal with what they described as predatory pricing. There weren't many details in what announced about what that means, but it's about how some of the pricing is used to restrict competition or unfairly impact suppliers. And third, there was talking about looking at some options for making it easier to bring imported food products into the country. There seems to be issues around labelling and so on. Those are all interesting things and could have some impact, but not. Our situation is right now, 1/4 of families living with food insecurity, children going without food. Disproportionate impacts in some of the communities where we're working, where we see really high need for food. We're still delivering volumes of food assistance that are about 40% more higher than pre-COVID times in our communities.
Yep.
So we're really focused on those solutions that can deliver, in the short term in our communities.
Let's circle back to that and let that sink in for people who perhaps didn't grasp that. A quarter of families in New Zealand dealing with food insecurity, not having the money to buy the food to feed their families. This is a national crisis.
Exactly. When you've got children, a quarter of households with children, I guess that would be my little caveat on that.
Mm-hmm.
But that means the children in our country are going hungry right now. And it's a couple of 100,000, that's at least. We need to do something now. We can't wait for a couple of years. It took a decade for a third grocery supplier to get established in Australia, for instance. So those solutions about competition in the sector and we don't even know if that'll deliver more affordable food for people on low incomes in the communities we're working with. So we need to really be focused on those things that can make a difference now.
Yeah.
And that means access to affordable food, to food supports for people in communities, and also really encouraging us to think about how we can have flourishing, thriving food systems in our communities. And, there's a whole group of us, community organizations, diving into this, doing stuff right now. We're asking that question and we're delivering. And I guess we're looking to government and local governments and our local communities to join with us in making that work.
I mean, hey, this has always been such a big issue that we need to have long, medium, and short-term solutions on this one. And hey, perhaps the policies announced yesterday will be great news for the children of the children who aren't getting enough to eat at the moment. So this is a long-term strategy. It's good to think big picture as well. But as you rightly say, that doesn't help for the children who are going to be hungry this week. Some more good news on the horizon, and wanting to unpack this a little bit, the idea of social supermarkets, sort of cutting out the middleman with this duopoly of mostly foreign-owned supermarkets here in New Zealand, to say, hey, social agencies such as the Salvation Army and others saying, we're going to have a not-for-profit supermarket. What does that look like, Paul?
Well, it looks different in different places, actually. That's kind of one of the exciting things. What we're seeing is, for instance, in Salvation Army, we've launched in some places called what we're calling the community grocer, which is working together with Food Together New Zealand, that supplies sort of wholesale food to for food cooperatives, and it's about a kind of I guess a click and collect type model where you're actually picking up food from a local church or community organisation, our local Salvation Army spaces. That's working in Palmerston North and getting established in Manukau and Hamilton at the moment for us. And the Auckland City Mission also has their Mission Grocer on a similar model. And here in Wellington, there's the Wesley Community Action have the Haora Kai model, which is about a food cooperative essentially online. And what's important about those is, yes, they're community focused. They're not for profit. They return their profits into the communities where they're based. They employ people from the local communities. They're supported by people in the local communities, and that's the vision we have for overcoming food security. These are things that are starting now. They exist now. They're not
Yep.
somewhere 10 years away.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can think about what are the things that can help other enterprises like ours, it doesn't have to be just not-for-profit,
Mm-hmm.
small businesses and communities. We're seeing those people trying those already,
Yep.
and we need to think about the things that will make that easier. And there are quite a few. We'd like to see also a focus on it being healthy food that's available,
Yeah.
so that we're not just in the convenience food sort of space, but we actually have affordable and healthy food in our communities.
One of the things I love about this, because hey, I know for many households, food parcels are an essential. It's not a luxury item. This is what they need to get the nutrients for them and for their children this week. But with the social supermarkets, it restores the dignity and the mana to the family. This isn't a walk of shame to go down to get a food parcel, because I know for a lot of people that's really tough. And they're perhaps choosing not to do that because of the shame associated with it. With these social supermarkets, dignity restored to the people who need that service. And I'm particularly thinking of the Wellington example, some wonderful creative thinking on how to make that work, centered on the needs of the customers. Rather than, and look, certainly not criticizing food parcels as a model, but this is a creative new way of doing this.
That's again the emphasis of what our work is. What we talk about in the Salvation Army is our Te Kai Makona food in abundance vision,
Yeah.
and that's about doing lots of small things, about the hospitality, about the sharing of food together, about allowing people to choose when they're working, seeking assistance about what they need,
Mm-hmm.
helping people to develop their skills, and also the social enterprise model that we're talking about with the community grocer idea. That's actually where anyone can shop. So it's not just about people needing on lower incomes. And it's a very practical way you can make as a decision to buy there through those co-ops, knowing that the food you're gathering is also providing an income and support for the work to help people in greater need.
Yeah.
So there are many planks to this, and one of the obstacles for people are some of the challenges around accessing of food, for instance, in the wholesale market. So I think
Yeah.
there is real work to be done, in both in the short term and long term, about how how we can get better access to that. But even now in the current setup, we're accessing food locally,
Mm-hmm.
sharing it locally, and and that's providing employment. That's building thriving local economies, which are really need to be part of the solution to overcoming food security.
Just wanting to push against this idea of this is a space where you have good guys and bad guys, because for the social supermarkets as well as for food parcels, that some of the local supermarkets, even some of the ones that are part of bigger chains, are also helping to support this work by donations of food. There is some social conscience in these bigger supermarkets. There is food donations being made in this space. Perhaps as a PR exercise for those supermarkets, again, trying to swallow my cynicism on this one, but perhaps more could be done for the big supermarkets to show some social goodwill in this space?
It's always there's always more that could be done, and I think there's no threat to a thriving local food market. They're never going to be on the scale necessary to be national competitors. I think there's a space for us to be together in this, working on this together. So certainly it is, and it's important that those relationships and the supply, in particular, as I say, about that supply of wholesale food, can be really looked at, because that's a space where I think we could really create some possibly fairly short-term responses that might help affordability in our communities.
And
we must also
sorry.
forget that when we're talking about affordability, it's also about people's incomes.
Yeah.
And whatever we do, it's not just about we're facing food and price inflation that's hit 5% again. It's on the way up in the latest month. So prices are going up, incomes are not keeping up. So when we're talking in our communities, we're also talking about making sure that people can access employment, can also have an income support that is adequate, and think about the hardship support people need. I guess there's a third thing around how we can empower our local councils to help, for instance, how they legislate and regulate access to food, so that we encourage good, healthy food enterprises to be available, and to think about restricting some of the outlets that are selling unhealthy food and leaving. It really feels like our food system is extremely messed up. In that we're not providing the kind of nutritious food people need at a price people can afford. Yet we've got a whole export industry that exports enough to feed 40 million. So we need, beside that thriving export, I'm not saying we shouldn't work hard on that, but beside that needs to be a thriving local food economies. And the two are not contradictory. We don't have to sacrifice our food security in our communities in order to sell stuff overseas. Both things can be done together, and we're pleading really to all those involved to work with us, together with us, to find out those solutions. We know they're there. We've seen some of them already in practice, and we need to build on that.
And hey, this opportunity for a wonderful partnership, yes, with government regulation, with social agencies, with church groups, but also partnering with local businesses, perhaps including some of the major food retailers in this space, to create a society where food security is something which people can perhaps take for granted again in the future. Paul, thank you so much for the work that you do. Thank you for the hope that you bring, and thanks for joining us on the program today.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe, and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.